Welcome to The Explainer. Let's jump right in. Because today we are tackling a heavy, but honestly an incredibly liberating topic. We're completely dismantling the myth of generational curses. Yeah, we're tearing that whole idea down. Instead, we're going to explore how to actively and intentionally clear out toxic family dynamics. We've all heard people talk about curses that supposedly haunt family lines, right? Well, today, we are reframing that entire concept. We're talking about breaking those toxic cycles, cleaning up the mess, and building a foundation of absolute peace for the future. Right out of the gate, the source material hits us with this profound truth. There's no curse. There's only patterns and decisions that have been made from generation to generation. I mean, that completely shifts the power dynamic, doesn't it? The critical point here is that we don't choose the dysfunction we're born into. A lot of people are born into incredibly difficult, complicated family structures. But, and this is the crucial takeaway, we absolutely choose whether to continue walking down that exact same path, or whether to forge an entirely new one. It's about recognizing that these are just repeated human decisions, not some mystical curse. And that brings us to the core definition we need to establish: generational patterns. These are the repeated behaviors, the decisions, and crucially, the silent agreements inherited from previous generations. These patterns hold immense power. They can either build a beautiful legacy or just completely destroy it. So instead of complaining about being born into dysfunction, instead of asking, why didn't they do their part, the speaker argues that we have to step up. The source suggests doing the hard work and aligning with a higher purpose, like agreeing with God, to make absolutely sure these destructive patterns never happen again.
Section 1. Patterns, not curses.
You know, when examining family history, there's a stark contrast in how we can respond. It's so easy to fall into the trap of just complaining about the cycle. It's super common to ask why our ancestors acted a certain way, or why people never stepped up. But there is another option: actually doing the work to end it. The speaker realized something vital here. You can spend your entire life complaining about the dysfunction, or you can take absolute responsibility to ensure it doesn't happen to you. It's a definitive choice, really. You either remain a passive victim of history, or you become an active architect of the future. This brings us to a deeply powerful agreement the speaker makes with themselves. I'm willing to take out the trash if I never got to take out the trash again. This isn't just about household chores, right? It's a brilliant, empowering metaphor. Taking out the trash represents a rhythmic, deeply intentional commitment to cleaning up the family line. It means doing the messy, unglamorous work right now so that the garbage of the past doesn't pile up and eventually spill over onto our children or suffocate our marriages.
Section 2. Taking out literal trash. Okay, so this whole concept actually stems from a very specific and, frankly, striking story. The speaker vividly recalls a moment from childhood where a grandparent instructed a sibling to take out the literal trash. And what happened next is just a classic example of dysfunction. A massive, totally capable, able-bodied man, standing about 6'4", simply kicked his feet up. He completely refused to do the basic task. So the heavy lifting was left for a much smaller 5'6" woman. He had the physical strength, sure, but he was entirely checked out.
This little anecdote reveals a whole checklist of toxic behaviors. We're talking about weaponized incompetence. We're talking about people kicking their feet up, refusing simple tasks, literally just because they're lazy, while women or other capable family members are forced to take on multiple roles all at once. The speaker points out how this physical laziness is really just a symptom of a much deeper, more insidious generational dysfunction. They even recount childhood memories of their mother having to take on traditional male roles, simply because the men who were physically present in the room were completely absent emotionally and practically.
In tolerating this kind of behavior, it is incredibly dangerous. As the source warrants, while you're sitting here trying to build a legacy, they're going to destroy everything attached to your name. Tolerating lazy, toxic people who refuse to do their share of the heavy lifting isn't just an annoyance, it's an active threat to your future. If this kind of generational laziness and weaponized incompetence is allowed to just exist in your shared space, it will rot the very foundation of the legacy you're trying to build.
Section 3. The emotional cleanup work.
Now, this challenges a very popular phrase we hear people proudly say all the time: the cycle ends with me. But the source text offers a really profound shift in perspective. The speaker argues that saying it ends with us kind of implies that we are still actively going through the trauma, that it actually reached us. Instead, the source encourages declaring it ended with the previous generation. It's about making the conscious decision that the dysfunction doesn't even get a chance to reach the present day. It was stopped at the source. We aren't carrying it.
Achieving this requires a major mental cleanup. Step 1 is simply allowing yourself to be angry. The speaker mentions their own commitment to stop denying that anger. Step 2, feel it and talk about it. You have to bring those hidden, uncomfortable emotions right to the forefront so they can actually be dealt with, rather than suppressing them or they'll just fester. And step 3, which is perhaps the hardest, is cutting toxic people off. The source suggests letting go of these individuals so that the right, supportive people can enter your life. You have to make room for positive growth instead of just repeating the past.
Section 4. A legacy of peace.
The source contrasts two distinct potential futures for us here. On one side is what the speaker terms generational filth. The text uses some really vivid descriptors: the stench of unhealed trauma, poverty, destructive behaviors, and what they describe as negative spiritual influences. But on the other side, as a direct result of taking out the trash, is generational peace. This is about building a clean, wealthy, and righteous legacy filled with strong covenants. This is exactly what the source argues we're actively fighting to build when we refuse to accept the dysfunction of the past. When evaluating a bloodline, the ultimate goal is to find peace, not the remnants of old garbage.
Because at the end of the day, doing this hidden work on our minds and emotions guarantees the protection of the future. The author notes that it shields a marriage from inherited resentments. It protects children from carrying burdens they literally never asked for. And most importantly, it actively teaches our daughters and sons exactly what to do and what absolutely not to tolerate. Because the work was done, the source explains that if external negative forces try to pass this dysfunction down again, the kids are fully equipped to immediately recognize it and shut it down. We've covered a lot of ground in this explainer today, from redefining curses to acknowledging the literal and emotional cleanup required to heal a family line. So, to wrap up, I want to leave you with this provocative final question from the source material. What generational trash are you willing to take out today? Seriously, reflect on the patterns in your own life. What boundaries do you need to firmly set right now to guarantee absolute peace in your own bloodline? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Remember, the power to create a new path is entirely in your hands. Take out the trash and start building your legacy of peace.